Boozers, I'm Coral. Welcome to my channel. If you're joining me for the first time, I mostly read things that are gross and weird. Mostly horror, but basically anything that's gross and weird. So if you're into that, welcome to the party. Today I am here with the books that I read in January, in the second half of the month. I had a much better second half of the reading month than I did the first half. So just to start you off there, it was much better. Let's get into some stats. For the entire month of January, I read 14 books. 6 of these were off of my TBR, so those are books that I owned previous to this year. 4 books were rereads. I read 4,438 pages, which is about 153 pages per day. I read 5 horror books, 3 literary fiction books, 3 non-fiction books, which includes a true crime book, and 3 sci-fi books. So there you go. The oldest book I read this month came out in 1995, and the most recent was a 2025 release. I did not read any books that were part of series this month. Now we can get into this, starting off with a book I'm not going to talk about at length, but this is Royale by Koushun, Takami. This was published in 1999, and this is the next book in my 50 favorite horror novels series. So if you'd like to hear more about it, check that out when I get that. When I get that done. Next we have Private Rites by Julia Armfield. This is a literary novel that has a little bit of like weirdness at the end. I mean, I don't know. Like throughout the book, it's a little bit weird. There's some magical realism going on, I feel like. And then at the end, things kind of go off the rails. This book was published in 2024, and this is my first time reading Julia Armfield. I've really wanted to read her book, Our Wives Under the Sea, and haven't come across a copy of it yet. I just need to buy one, really. But also, I like a specific copy, so I gotta find that specific edition. In this, we're following 3 sisters who are all queer. They have strained relationships with each other and strained relationship with their father, who's recently died. Now, I read that this is a reimagining of the King Lear story. I believe that's Shakespeare, but I don't know any more about it than that. I don't even know if that's actually true. I did not look that up, so that could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's a Shakespeare play. And 1, not familiar with Shakespeare. 2, not familiar with whatever fucking King Lear story this is, so I don't really know what parallels connect the two, but that's what it said. So there's 3 sisters, a dead father, and they live in a time where there has been nonstop rain for years, to the point where like certain structures that used to exist are now under the water, and in the world they've adapted to living that way, but the rains keep coming, so it's like they have to keep adapting to that. Most of this book is following the relationships and drama between the sisters. It's really 2 really close sisters, and then their much younger half-sister who's like more than a decade younger than them. They really spent most of their lives, all of them, with primarily their father. So there's a lot of shit to unpack for them, and a lot of shit to unpack, you know, between each other. The father seems like he kind of used to pit them against each other, purposely sow discord between them. So there's, you know, like I said, some shit going on, and that's really what this is about. But then also, like, the end takes a turn, and it's like, I think there's probably foreshadowing to that. I think I need to reread this, really. I'm like positive that there is some foreshadowing that I just didn't pick up on because it, I guess, was so subtle. I don't know, but like then the end is like wild. I don't know how to explain it without giving it away, but it's just really weird compared to the rest of the story, and I'm not really sure what happened. So I don't know. Did I like this? Yes. Is it my favorite book? No. Would I like to read more of her stuff? Yes, also. I think her writing, oh my god, her writing is fucking beautiful. If you're somebody who, like, really enjoys prose and, like, lyrical feeling writing, like S.T. Gibson or Eric LaRocca, you know, people like that. Poppy Z. Bright, I feel like, has great prose too. I think that, you know, maybe you'd want to try out some Julia Armfield. I also read Escape by Carolyn Jessop this month. This is a memoir, nonfiction, about Carolyn's time growing up in the FLDS, so that is the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. It's an offshoot of the Mormon Church that stays, at least in the past, stayed closer to what they felt the scripture taught, rather than, you know, just the regular Latter-day Saints. And, you know, in the last, like, 20 years, that has changed a lot because of the, you know, the man who became the prophet for the church, Warren Jeffs, who's now in prison. And I think he's one of the most evil men that lives on this earth right now. And I think that's saying something because there's a lot of evil men out there, but, just like, oh my god, I cannot fucking believe this guy. He makes me so upset. Like, and then, you know, not just him, but the people below him, the men below him who choose to take his word as gospel, choose to see him as a prophet. You know, they didn't have to do that, but they did, and so they let this man come into power, basically. So it's infuriating. Especially after reading Carolyn's story about what happened to her. She's somebody who believed deeply in her religion and her faith that was very important to her. However, there were some things that happened in the FLDS that it was like she accepted it, but she didn't like it. And I'm sure that caused some warring feelings, conflicting feelings in her mind, because, you know, she's talking about how there would be, like, once in a while, there would be, like, dances, community dances for younger people, and then, like, an old guy would show up and, like, the girls would fucking run. They would book it so they didn't get caught with this guy, not because they thought they would be in trouble, but more because if he sets your eye on you, he's probably gonna end up, you know, asking the prophet if he can marry you. And so it's like, these girls don't want that, but also they're still devout, and that's confusing to me. But it somehow their brains made that work. But I don't know. I could go on and on about, like, the things that fucking made me so upset reading this, about the way the FLDS treats women, and more recently, the way that they've treated, I don't know if this is still a practice, but for a long time in the 2000s, Warren Jeffs was kicking, like, teenage boys out. They would just be like, okay, get out. And these people, like, don't have schooling because Warren Jeffs said, like, no more school, and they don't have any way to make money. They have no connections outside of their community, and he just fucking I don't know. I could just, it just makes me so upset. But this is about how Carolyn Jessop managed to escape from this cult. And it was not easy. Even after she escaped, it was not easy. Because the man she was married to was high up in the cult and kind of close-ish to the prophet. I shouldn't even call him that. He was kind of close-ish to Warren Jeffs, the monster Warren Jeffs. So it was a very tough time for her. She had 8 kids. She was something like 35 or something like that, and she had absolutely fucking nothing. And her kids, some of her kids were fighting her because they were so brainwashed by this shit. And one of her daughters, even after she turned 18, went back And I certainly hope that she's the only one, because I just can't imagine. Yeah, so heartbreaking, infuriating, so interesting. I'm glad that I picked this up. I'm glad that I let this sit for so long so that I could read it and really enjoy it right now. I also read 3 volumes of Saga this month. I read 4, 5, 6. So these were published in 2014, 15, and 16. I just love this series so much. It never, like, I could read it over and over. You just gaze at the illustrations. They're so vibrant and beautiful and exotic. But ultimately, the story is about 2 star-crossed lovers. They come from a warring planet and its moon. This conflict has spread throughout the solar system, I guess. I don't know. This does take place in outer space, kind of. I mean, they don't really spend a lot of time in outer space, but they planet hop and moon hop and shit like that. So anyway, like, this conflict has grown beyond just this planet and its moon. And there is, like, the robot kingdom now also involved in it. And I don't know, the robot kingdom, I don't know if they rule everything, but they're, like, you kind of want to listen to them. And I don't know, I could, like, go on explaining it forever, but ultimately these 2 people have a child together, and propaganda says that could never happen because they're too different. But they're close enough to have a baby together, and so now they're, like, running from all sorts of people who want this family dead because it can't get out that, like, the Moonies and the Wings aren't so different from each other, right? And it's just a really great story that I love. Okay, last but not least, we have I'm Sorry If I Scared You by Mae Murray. This came out last year, and this is a horror story that's a little bit lighter on, like, the horror and more weird. There's aliens, and there is a fetus that possesses its mother, I guess. I don't know. It's about Odie, and she is driving home for Thanksgiving. She's, like, the first one in her family to go to college. Her family is impoverished, but she loves them, even though sometimes they're not great. And she's driving home mostly because she was assaulted on campus, and that ended up creating this fetus. And she takes a pill to end the pregnancy, but rescues the little fetus out of, like, a gas station bathroom. And we don't really know why she does that, but it ends up possessing her and allowing her to, like, be free a little bit, kind of, like, let go of her earthly constraints and do things that maybe she was too afraid to do before. But yeah, this is really more character focused, but I really enjoyed it. It had short chapters. I really flew through it. There are some interesting POV switches in it, and I did see some complaints that, like, that made it feel choppy, but to me, it kind of added to, like, the fever dream feeling of this story, and the end is so good. I really, like, this is one of the best books I read this month. Yes, Mae Murray's writing is also very, very nice. There were a lot of passages in here that were just, like, beautifully written, and ones that made you think for a second. And what's one? It's, like, in the very beginning of the book. She was assaulted as her mother was assaulted, and as her grandmothers before her were assaulted, before they really called it assault. The violence rippling on and on forever, past and future, muddled in a mixing bowl. So, I don't know, that one just caught me, I guess. Really weird, interesting, lovely book. In the end, you're like, oh, that's nice. And not a lot of books are like that, you know? So I really enjoyed that one. Those are the books that I read in the second half of January. I'm really ready to put this month behind me and move on into February. But I'd love to know, as always, if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, if any of these have kind of sparked your interest, and if you're excited to hear my thoughts on Battle Royale. I learned some stuff about it that I find kind of interesting, so I'm excited to share that with you. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Goodbye!